Well, I think we're live. We'll give it a couple seconds here to get the notifications out there.
On Facebook, we're live.
Should be Facebook and the YouTubes. Let's see who. Well, it says we're live. Normally, Facebook takes a couple seconds before I get a notification that we've gone live, and we'll see if there's anybody logging in here. There we go.
Yeah, I see that. We're live.
All right. So for our normal listeners and watchers, you're probably noticing we're minus Riley T. Bowman, but we have none other than Robert Beckman from the Firearms Trainers podcast filling in, and I think it's going to be an awesome show. It's been a great day so far for Second Amendment type stuff.
Always glad to be on with you, Matthew. Always something interesting. We always manage to get ourselves out of whatever holes we dig them into by the end of the podcast, right?
Yeah, you saved me. That's normally how it goes. Riley disappears. I got thrown in here, and I'll try not to put my foot in my mouth too many times. But
I got long arms, I can reach down and pull you up.
Well, this is awesome. So we already got some people logging in, and YouTube and Facebook. Will and Ted, Common Clay, Pat. Very nice. Some of the usual suspects here. But we got a good show coming up. Not just because it's Rob Beckman, and he's an awesome podcaster and dude, but we got some great news coming up. We're going to be talking about some news, and we normally throw in some gear reviews. I kind of dropped this on Rob at the last minute. I don't know if you have some gear some new gear that you want to talk about, but if we have time, I don't know if we're even going to have time because there's so much to talk about.
There's a lot going on today. A lot.
Yeah. So if we get to it, we get to it. If not, you guys won't miss out. You won't feel bad because we got some good stories here. We're going to talk about, obviously, the Supreme Court ruling that came out. Huge case. Lots of
Unless you've been living underneath a rock, you've heard about this because it's all over the news.
Yep. We got a couple new guns coming out from Walther and FN. Some stuff about teachers, arming teachers. We have a cool video that a sheriff did just kind of explaining magazine capacity limitations and why they are not effective. And not to end it on a downer, but the federal gun stuff that's going on right now with the Republicans who have sold us out. We'll talk briefly about that. But if you're ready to go, man, I think we'll start the recording for the actual podcast here. What do you think?
Let's make it happen.
All right, man.
Make it so, as Captain James Kirk used to say.
All right, so we're going to start the recording here in 3, 2, 1. This is the Concealed Carry Podcast, Season 6, Episode 17. Welcome to the Concealed Carry Podcast, part of the concealedcarry.com network of podcasts, brought to you by Mountain Man Medical. Today is Thursday, June 23rd, 2022, and I'm your host, Matthew Maruster, and I'm joined today by Rob Beckman. What's up, man? Hey,
we're having a great day today. Great day.
Yep. Great news for Second Amendment stuff and gun rights and all that. If you're a fan of Riley T. Bowman, you're going to have to go without him today. He's busy doing Riley stuff. So it's Rob and I, two guys from Ohio. We're just going to chat about some gun stuff, bring you some news, some interesting things, like I said, from the Supreme Court, some new guns and some other stuff going on. But before we get into the news, we got to talk about our sponsors. The first one, I'll let you talk about it, Rob. It's barrel block. I know you are familiar with the product, and
barrel block, a great product to go along and use in your I use it in my training classes a lot, but it also works out really well for doing dry fire at home. And what they do is allow you to go along with absolute certainty to show that the barrel cannot fire a live projectile. And because of the way it's made, you have a barrel block and you also have a magazine block, and the combination between them allows you to go along and do dry fire very efficiently. We normally know that when you have a magazine in your firearm and it's empty, that the slide locks back. That's what the slide lock, or the going along and having the barrel block in there being absolutely safe. And in my opinion, anybody who does dry fire should really go along and have a barrel block to make sure that that their gun is unloaded and that they can go along and safely dry fire it at home, in the classroom, or on the range.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can head over to the website is www.blocksafety. That's BLOK safety.com. Or if you type in barrel block with a K, not a CK, it'll also get you there. And our second sponsor is the Rangetech Bluetooth shot timer. I know I have one. Rob, I know you have one as well.
No, I've got two.
He's got two. All right. Well, it's one of the first shot timers out there that was Bluetooth that you pair to your phone. There's a couple, that came out recently, but this was the first one. It pairs to your phone. Like I said, you can control it all by your phone, save string of fire. You can take pictures and attach it to different strings of fire. All the controls, setting par times, all that stuff is done on your phone. It's a fantastic option. I have the club timer and I love it, but one of the problems is changing modes, going in and setting par times and stuff like that. It's just it's not user intuitive, right? So using your phone, you can set, ready commands and all kinds of stuff. It's really cool. And you're not buying something that's made in China, and it's affordable. It's, I'd say 60% the cost of some of the other shot timers out there. I would highly recommend checking it out. If you head over to rangetechtimer.com, that's rangetechtimer.com, and check it out. It's going to be in your budget. If you're looking for a shot timer, it's a great one to go with.
Now, one thing I like that I bring the perspective from an instructor standpoint to this is the Rangetech Bluetooth timer allows me to go along and have the person wear the Bluetooth timer on their belt, so it's right by them. I don't have to be right behind them and holding it up to the ear so they can hear it through a hearing protection. And I can control the timer remotely with my smartphone through the application. That gives me the ability to go along and do it remotely and safely, and be able to observe what that student's doing on the range to give them the best advice I can.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So, all right. So I think we're going to get into it right now, because this is what's been on all the news and people's, Facebook feeds and all this. The ruling that just came out, Supreme Court ruling, in the case of New York State Rifle Pistol Association versus Bruin. And this dealt with New York's restrictive shall issue ruling or law pertaining to their concealed carry permit. So if you're not familiar, we'll just cover it really briefly. Some states are shall issue and some states are may issue. Shall issue states, you're not prohibited legally from possessing a firearm. You go through whatever requirements they have, be it training, paying your money, whatever those fees might be. If you're not prohibited and you check all the wickets, then you are issued a license. In 7 states, New York's one of them, they have a may issue type situation going on, where you pass all that stuff, you do everything, you jump through the hoops, And then at the end, you sit down and you have to give them just cause or some reason why you deserve the right to be able to defend yourself in public with a firearm. And, this was the question is, we had the Heller decision, which basically was focused on inside the home, the individual right to have a firearm for protection inside the home, but it didn't address outside the home. So this kind of left that area for the states to kind of put a hold, and chill the Second Amendment for a lot of folks. And so the challenge was there and said, why should we not be able to, why do we need permission or some reason to go through and carry a firearm for self-defense outside my home? It's ridiculous. So I'll kick this over to you. I just want to state one part of the ruling, and in the show notes you'll have a link and you can go and see the actual decision, read it for yourself. I highly recommend you do it. There's links in there. But I'm just going to read one part of it because I think it really sums up what we're talking about. So it says here that the constitutional right to bear arms in public for self-defense is not a second-class right, subject to an entirely different body of rules than the other Bill of Rights guarantees. We know of no other constitutional right that an individual may exercise only after demonstrating to government officers some special need. This is not how the First Amendment works when it comes to unpopular speech or the free exercise of religion. It's not how the Sixth Amendment works when it comes to a defendant's right to confront the witness against him. And it's not how the Second Amendment works when it comes to public carry for self-defense. New York's proper cause requirement violates the 14th Amendment in that it prevents law-abiding citizens with ordinary self-defense needs from exercising their right to keep and bear arms. We therefore reverse the judgment of the Court of Appeals and remand the case for further proceedings consistent with this opinion. It is so ordered. Boom. So what do you think? Rob?
It's great because here's the statement I picked up from Justice Samuel Alito. He said, today, unfortunately, many Americans have good reason to fear that they will be victimized if they are not unable to protect themselves. And today, no less than in 1791, the Second Amendment guarantees their right to do so. And I think what really need to take away from this is not arming criminals. This is not making guns more accessible to kids or any other restricted groups there. This is allowing honest, law-abiding citizens to be able to go along, defend themselves without going to a government official and having that need to go along and justify to them. Because what's justification? That I'm afraid, of my domestic abuser? Am I afraid of, the gangs in my neighborhood? Am I afraid that I'm driving around in my, $300,000 Bentley and I might be a target? Because I bet you in those three examples, you could probably tell who got licenses in New York and who didn't get it. But the ones that are the single moms in the lower income areas, the families that are in an unsavory part of town, or somebody who works late at night, those people probably deserve it a lot more than the person who's driving a $300,000 Bentley, because the $300,000 Bentley person also has the ability to hire his own security.
Yeah. And so, we've seen in different cities that have, may issue where there's basically a gatekeeper, right? That get, you have to tell them, hey, I'd like this because I carry a lot of cash or whatnot. And they denying average Joes and prioritizing, connected officials, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether that be politicians or celebrities or wealthy people, and those people getting concealed carry permits sooner and without any sort of jumping through hoops, right? And this corruption has been exposed in several cities, and so it's not the fact that like we don't trust the police to do a good job or anything. It's just that you have a system that is stripping away somebody's right to self-defense and putting it in the hands of somebody who is not an elected official, right? They're not elected. They're not accountable to us. And so I think that, it's just ripe for misuse and abuse, and getting to the point that you were making about, who deserves the right, what is the threshold? It's an arbitrary, it's a subjective threshold that somebody sitting there says, well, no, I don't think that's, you're at risk enough. And that's just not right. And, this obviously came up during oral arguments. And in the article that we wrote, that I wrote this morning on concealedcarry.com, it's called "Let Freedom Ring." SCOTUS affirms the right to bear arms outside the home. And during oral arguments in the case, there was an exchange between the New York Solicitor General, Barbara Underwood, who was arguing the case for New York, and Justice Samuel Alito. And Underwood even recognized through questioning that if an applicant stated, and this is from the exchange, if an applicant stated they leave work late at night and have to walk from a subway station through a high crime neighborhood to get home, that New York would deny that person's application because they did not cite a specific threat. Like, so just random crackheads, right, stabbing and robbing and mugging people on the subway isn't enough. You have to say, yeah, I was a victim of a crime, and that guy, lives over here, or I've restrained. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, because I know that and I'm not going to, make this a political discussion, but we know that in general, the Democrats are more anti-gun, more gun control than the Republicans. For the most part, we know that there are tons of Republicans right now, and we'll talk about it later, that are stabbing us in the back and going to offer over our rights as a sacrificial atonement for tragedies that happen. But that these politicians that live and die on this gun control, agenda, that's their power play. They are going berserk over this, thinking that this somehow allows, willy-nilly people to start carrying guns. And it's just not so. It's a misrepresentation. Everybody deserves the right to carry a firearm in self-defense. They are, especially if they've jumped through all the legal ramifications that the state has already said, right? Like, if you go and get training, you've paid your fine, your fees, you've gotten fingerprinted, you're not a prohibited person. Why on earth should you not be able to carry a firearm unless you have a specific, reason that some guy sitting behind a desk is going to say no or yes? It's just, it's ridiculous.
You and I are kind of lucky in that we live in the state of Ohio. And the state of Ohio, just like you stated, you go through the process. You have, you've got a clean record. The state has to issue you a concealed carry license within 45 days. It's just the way the law is. When you go along and look at New York, New Jersey, Delaware, different states that go along and have these requirements of going along and saying, you have to prove to us that you need it. And then on top of it, you go along and you realize that they don't have any criteria to tell you exactly what proof is. I mean, do you have to have been attacked? Do you have to have a restraining order? Do you just have to, what are all the criterias that you would have to be? And when you think about it in the terms of somebody who's low income, somebody who has limited means, it's discriminating directly against them, because how much time can you take off of work to go along and argue that you need to be able to protect your family in your crime-ridden neighborhood, or because you're walking to the subway, those types of things. And it just makes my skin crawl when I see these requirements, because I know just how lucky we are in Ohio to be able to go in, get fingerprinted, pay our money, and they do a quick background check, and if we got our license, and we don't have to go through these hoops that a lot of the other these other states require from us lawful citizens to go through.
Yeah. And that kind of segues into like, so what practically does this mean, right? Is this going to make pretty much, I'm not a constitutional scholar. From what I can see, it seems like that it's pretty much killed may issue states. This criteria of this arbitrary criteria of issuing permits based on some justified cause, that you have to show some just cause. And how long that's going to take for these states to implement this and what the backlash is going to be. I think if we step back and look at it big picture wise, we know that there's going to be a counter to this. So New York and Hawaii and DC and all these places that do these may issue or just cause permits, I think what we're going to see is them, because this ruling didn't say that they can't states can't require training or fees or anything like that, right? And so I think that they're going to counter this as drastically as they can by starting to limit where you can take firearms. So start prohibiting it in more areas, or make it more, because the whole point of this is to hinder somebody's ability to get a concealed carry permit. They just want to make it as difficult, as time consuming, the process as long as possible, to dissuade people from actually doing it. And so I think that they're going to move in other ways. They'll start taxing, ammunition and doing these things. We can't be naive enough to think that this is going to be, going to change. It will change the landscape, no doubt, but there's going to be a backlash.
Yep, no doubt about that. I said Ohio's got the 45 days that they have to issue your license or tell you why they couldn't issue it. But I know, like up in New York City and other places, they take months in order to issue something. You can imagine if you were somebody who lived in a neighborhood and you had a threat against you, and somebody said, okay, yeah, you can get this, and probably somewhere in the next 4 to 6 months, we'll get back to you. Your Supreme Court did not rule on the timeliness that's required, and I could see things being slowed down, and at the same time, they could go along and require specific training or specific things to make it more difficult for people to get.
Yeah. And this is why it's so important to hammer politicians at the state level and hold them accountable and get involved in, local gun rights organizations that are actually fighting for rights, your gun rights, and holding politicians accountable, whether they're a Democrat, Republican. I think in Ohio, we have probably a harder battle in Ohio against Republicans than we do Democrats, right? Mm-hmm. Because we have a Republican majority, but it's still an effort. And through some organizations, Ohio Gun Owners is probably one of the one that comes to my mind that's probably the most active here in Ohio. But of just hammering even Republicans that want to walk this line and they want the Republican vote. They want to say they're pro-gun and look at my record of voting and blah, 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 and this and that. But when it comes down to it, they water down the bill. They sabotage bills. And it's the Republicans just as much as the Democrats. The Democrats are just more open about it. But yeah, we have to start holding these politicians accountable and saying, look, you're going to get voted out and you're gone. And so these people that have, that don't have another job and their whole job is a politician, they're holding on to dear life, just trying to get elected. And so if we can hold their feet to the fire and make them vote on bills, that's the only way that this is gonna change locally for people in New York or Hawaii and things like that. Yeah, these federal, this Supreme Court is huge. This ruling is huge, but still, you have politicians that are now, just turning it on to counter this. And you got to be ready. You got to be ready for this.
Yeah, you got to be ready. In Ohio, where I said before, we're lucky, but at the same time, we don't have everything we want for it. And that's where you've got to engage your politicians on a regular basis, let them know who you are, and let them know, a simple thing from like today is, are they looking at the Second Amendment as a second class right? And if they can't answer that honestly and easily, then maybe you should be looking for other politicians. And we'll have elections coming up this fall, and think about asking politicians about where they stand on different issues, because if they're trying to push where you can carry what you can and can't, taxes and all those other kind of things, then they're probably not the right candidate for you.
Yep. Because what happens, in one state, it doesn't go unnoticed in other states, right? This is what we've seen with the constitutional carry or permit. We see other states jumping on board, and it can just as easily go the other way. And that's what we got to fight against. There's one other quote that I'll put out there, and then I'll let you wrap it up about this Supreme Court ruling, Rob. But this is from Justice Thomas, and this is again from the opinion that he wrote, and it says the District of Columbia v. Heller and McDonald v. Chicago, and those are two big gun cases that set precedent for how gun rights, the cases were looked upon. But it says, we recognize that the Second and 14th Amendments protect the right of an ordinary law-abiding citizen to possess a handgun in the home for self-defense. And that's what we were talking about before. But it just, it was just kind of narrowly, the scope was narrowly focused on inside the home for self-defense. But in this case, petitioners and respondents agree that ordinary law-abiding citizens have a similar right to carry handguns publicly for their self-defense. We too agree and now hold consistent with Heller and McDonald that the Second and 14th Amendments protect an individual's right to carry a handgun for self-defense outside the home, period. So that is a huge statement, right? Like the Second and 14th Amendments protect an individual's right, your right, my right. If you're listening to this, you're not a prohibited person. It protects your individual right to carry a handgun for self-defense outside the home. And so in this ruling, no longer can they put these, weights and measure means tests to your rights. They can't test it. They can't say you need to, check a box to exercise this right. It can't be something arbitrary. Yes, they can set criteria for issuing a permit, but that is a huge statement from Justice Thomas in the court, and I just think that this is going to affect other cases, gun cases, coming up. And I know that there are already some that are in the works that they're waiting for this ruling to come out. And I think we're going to see a lot of movement now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think to kind of wrap things up, this is a star-spangled day for 2A rights, but it's not the end. As you said, there are going to be some end runs around this to try to put restrictions on it. And there's other restrictions that we'd like to see lifted also, from a 2A standpoint. And for those people that are listening, get active with a pro 2A organization, get active on the federal, on local level, and reach out to your politicians, let them know where your thoughts are, because that's where things really happen. It happens. There's more change on local and state level than there is in federal level. This Bruin case has been 10 years in the making. But how much stuff has gone along locally that has changed during that time frame? Think about that for yourself. So if you really want to make a impact, don't think about, okay, the next Supreme Court case is going to be this. Think about, how can I influence my local legislators to vote the way I want them to.
Mm-hmm. Right on, man. All right, so hopefully that positive note carries us through, because we're going to have a kind of a downer at the end, but we'll get through it. All right, we're going to go and talk about a new pistol from Walther. It's called the WMP. It's the Walther Magnum pistol, chambered in 22 Magnum. Did you get a chance to check this out, Rob?
It's a pretty cool pistol, I do have to say. And a lot of times, people go along and they say, it's a 22 pistol, and 22 long rifles not that powerful, unless you're going out hunting squirrels. But a 22 Magnum puts things into a completely different category from a caliber perspective, and that's where Walther, with their P20 or their WMP model compared to the P22 model, it's kind of a game changer, because the 22 Magnum, it can do some serious damage to whatever you're shooting it at.
Yeah, and there's other, if you guys follow, your gun aficionados, and this has kind of been a trend, right? Like a lot of the Beretta, Glock, SIG, they're all releasing 22 caliber pistols, but most of those were 22 long rifle, and this is a 22 Magnum. And there's some unique things. It's a little bit bigger than the P22. There's some other, unique things. This has, if you're familiar with Walther, some of their guns have a paddle magazine release, where it's, on the trigger guard, and you press down, and it's like a paddle, and it releases the magazine. Well, this has a paddle and a button. And so that's kind of unique. Some other kind of little unique things. It's optic ready. So that's a nice feature. It uses a mounting plate. And so, yeah, other than that, I mean, it's a Walther, so it's going to have, the ergonomics of a Walther. It looks very similar to some of their other pistols, a little different than the P22. It doesn't have a magazine disconnect like the P22. That's a super annoying thing. But yeah, so if that's something you like, you're recoil sensitive, you have trouble racking a slide or something like that, this may be an option for you. Like I said, it's a little bit bigger than probably what most people typically carry concealed, but it's not too big at all for concealed carry, but might be an option, or at least something to check out. So that's the Walther WMP. And the next one we have FN released the 57N MRD. It's an optics ready pistol. It's using the new 5.57 by 28 NATO round. So I don't know. Did you get a chance to check this out, Rob, at all?
A little bit, not as much as Supreme Court case, but a little bit.
No.
The 5.7 round is a heck of a performing round. I mean, it gets it screams out of the barrel, and to see FN take this on, and with optics ready pistol and such, really kind of lets you know where things go. And for those that are kind of wondering, 5.7's right around the same diameter as a 22 caliber. So you're looking at, again, a pistol that is shooting a much faster round than a 22 long rifle, that you can carry in a defensive package.
People kind of complain about, right, with certain firearms and stuff. So this is also going to be, optic ready, as I think every single pistol right now should be. Any pistol released right now should be optics ready right from the factory. But yeah, I think that this is going to be an interesting pistol. It's the capacity on this guy is 20 rounds, guys. So you're talking about a small caliber round traveling very fast. And I think, this is not going to be my pistol. I'm telling you, not because of performance wise or anything, but the MSRP is like $1,500. So I can tell you, unless, someone wants to gift this to me, this is not going to make it into my, safe. But
Well,
Cool,
the
cool.
ammo's expensive too.
Yeah, yeah. So that's an issue.
But
But
for those that want, something modern, leading edge type of thing, the 5.7 round is definitely one of those that's very interesting. Light recoil to it, and you can get a good size pistol in that round, and it is a good defensive round too. I mean,
yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's shift a little bit back to kind of the gun rights or this kind of debate thing. Obviously, we had that tragedy in Uvalde and other, tragic shootings, and from that, obviously, there's a huge push and discussion about what to do to harden schools. What should we be doing? Should we be putting up fences? Should we have security? All these different things, and some of the conversations are good, and some of them are just hijacked by complete lunatics. But one thing that I think it infuriated me, and so I wrote an article the other day. It's called "Opposing Armed Teachers Shows It's Not About Safety," and this is on concealedcarry.com. And the reason why it kind of infuriated me is that I constantly hear, whenever somebody says, "Hey, let's arm teachers, let's give teachers the right or the ability to carry a firearm on campus, um, to defend themselves and the children," right? And it's without fail, there's three basic arguments that oppose arming teachers, and they're all I can understand, right? I can understand somebody saying something out of ignorance and just not knowing, but some of them are just they're too dumb to be out of ignorance. And one of them is the argument when somebody says, "Hey, I think we should consider arming teachers," and somebody will say, "Well, teachers aren't paid enough to worry about defending, kids, so we don't pay teachers enough, and that's not their job." And I got this because the National Education Association, the teachers union, the president, Nancy Pringle, no relation to the chip
snack
dude,
food.
right? She said this, and this is just this. This is if you want to tear out your hair, listen to this. Okay, so she says, and this is the president of the teachers union, probably one of the most corrupt unions in the whole country. I'm sorry. She said, educators and parents overwhelmingly reject the idea of arming school staff. Well, that's not true. Rather than arming educators with guns, we need to be giving them the tools needed to inspire their students. Rather than putting the responsibility of individual teachers on individual teachers, our elected leaders need to pass laws and protect children from gun violence and bring an end to senseless, preventable killings. So, comes in with the firearm, and you don't want to. You have too much on your plate to worry about protecting yourself or other kids. What you really need are tools that inspire.
Mhm.
I just think it's insane. I can't imagine saying something like that dumb in public. So
Well,
I'm going to hand this over to you, and so you could kind of give your opinion on this debate about arming teachers. Um,
well, yeah. As you can tell from the video, I've pulled out my hair for more than one of these kind of topics. I'm kind of short on hair right now. I also got two sisters that are teachers and work in schools, so it kind of hits where somebody is stopped, just count off every 20 seconds there's another gunshot. And in Uvalde, I believe it probably is going to average out to be just about the same when you go along, take an hour and how many times he's shot. It might even be slower than that. But it's one of those situations to where going along, responding faster, whatever the method is the only way of stopping the lunatics. Now, I hear people say, hey, I became a teacher. I didn't want to become an armed guard. And that's great. They don't need to go along and carry. But what do you tell that teacher, that janitor, that administrator that says, I would be willing to do anything for my kids? And, do you go along and say, well, sorry, you can't do anything until the police arrive, and you just have to sit there and inspire that shooter not to shoot people, because we know how that's going to end. And that's where we need to go along and realize that the only way to stop the needless death is by having a quicker response. I've heard people go along and say, then teachers have to worry about where they're carrying and being around kids and everything else like that. Think about it from this way. How many hundreds and thousands and millions of people across the United States carry concealed every day? And they learn how to go along, conceal it. They learn how to go along, control it when they're in Walmart, when they're in church, when they're at the grocery store, when they're just walking down the street and you see them and have a conversation. If people can learn how to do it there, they can do it in a school situation, the people that want to. And here's one other thing that I'll take away and give a plug for Faster Saves Lives. They not only have the program that teaches you how to go along and effectively shoot a firearm, but they actually go along and teach you how to go along and deal with the aftermath of it from the trauma perspective. Because if you can get there and stop the killer faster, and then there's a whole bunch of people that are shot that are around because it took you a minute or 2 minutes to get there, you need to know how to do some trauma medicine. Because here's one of the things that people don't talk about enough. We've got great police, we've got great paramedics are out there, but standard protocol is that your paramedics do not come in to an active scene until it's been made safe. That means that if there is a shooting, the police will come in. They might be 5 or 10 minutes before they can allow the paramedics in there. If you're in that classroom with yourself or students that are shot, you need to go along and have the skills available to go along and survive and that shooting and be alive when the paramedics come in there. And those are all skills that, okay, for the people that don't want to carry firearms, teach them some trauma first aid. For the people that do want to go along and carry a firearm, teach them how to conceal it, how to use it effectively so that they can be a first line of defense against it. Is it going to stop every situation? No. But if we can take it from being 20 people next time to being only 2 people, that would be even better. Because no matter what gun laws that might be passed one way or the other, I think everybody in the United States will admit that we will have guns around for the next 100 years easily. Because even if they outlaw them tomorrow, no, you'd be a fool to think that the government's going to be able to get every single gun back within a year. Australia, New Zealand, all those places that have outlawed them like that still are finding guns, 10 years later. And those are just the situations, that we know about. Yeah. So sorry for rambling on there, Matthew.
No. I mean, that's perfect. I needed a chance to take a breath, because this just fires me up, right? Like we have right now, there's 28 states. A lot of people don't know this. Right now, there's 28 states that provide some through either, with some certain limitations or requirements, teachers to carry in school. And so that's 28 states. And we don't have, an epidemic or a pandemic of teachers shooting kids accidentally in class. We just don't. In this article, I like I said, we'll have show notes and you can check this article out in the show notes. It's in the article that I wrote, I referenced the Giffords Law Center, which has a page dedicated to fighting against arming teachers in school. And what they do on this page is they list every single, every single gun-related incident that happen on a campus. It doesn't have to be a teacher carrying.
In a school zone. In a school
Right,
zone, they do.
right.
Yeah, which makes it even worse because that's 1,000 feet around a school. So
Right.
continue
And
on.
so, so you have incidents on here of, a child getting a hold, or a suspect getting a hold of a deputy's gun in a fight on a campus. And they use that as justification, or one of the, check marks against, well, if we have, we have incidents of gun violence on campus. It's ridiculous. Like, and not one of them resulted in anybody's death. Not one. And I'm talking about like hundreds of incidents. And Giffords wouldn't have missed somebody getting shot on a campus by a teacher and killed, right? Like, they wouldn't have missed that. So we have to look at the big picture and say, like, yeah, if teachers overwhelmingly in these 28 states were leaving guns all over and kids were getting shot left and right, of course, I wouldn't be advocating that. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about giving teachers who want the right, or want the ability to carry on campus, the ability to. And if you want to set some, criteria, X amount of hours, as long as it's not ridiculous, right? I think one of the things, it was like 490 hours of training. It was like more than police officers, and so as long as it's reasonable, and here's one thing. We need, as a, I hate using the word as a community, because I don't even know what that means, but like gun organizations that are that might listen to this. Instead of, I have no problem if you want to give, billions of rounds over to Ukraine. That's awesome. But why don't we, pull together and donate safes to safe storage options to schools that want teachers to be armed? Why don't we do that? Why don't we push for those types of things and free training for teachers and things like that? Why don't we do that? And I think that overall, we would see a more positive result from that than, and maybe you can do both, right? But I'm just saying, like, if we focus some of those resources and some of those ideas of outreach and helping people, instead of just giving out locks, cable locks that are going to end up in the trash, let's be honest. Why don't we try to come together and do something like that for schools?
Matthew, think about this in Uvalde. If that person went into the door that was broken, the lock didn't work, whatever, and made it to those two classrooms and started shooting, and one of those two teachers would have been armed, he wouldn't be able to get a whole lot, and it would negated the whole issue that happens with like the police response, because police have a hard job to do, and it's demonstrated, I think, at Uvalde, because they've got to weigh the personal safety of the officers with the personal safety of the victims, trying to figure out, what they don't want to escalate the situation. They also don't want to go along and get somebody needlessly killed. And that's where, when we're sitting back, 4 weeks later after something happens, it makes it really easy to know all the facts and second guess them for it. But it also goes along and underscores that when you have a dynamic critical incident like they had there, it's confusing. Nobody knows for sure what's going on in the heat of the moment, except for the people that were inside that room. And that could be one of those situations where if one of those teachers would have been able to respond, would have been. And think about it. Just heard on the news last night, one of those teachers was actually one of the police deputies' wife. So she would have been very familiar with a gun, very competent with it. Just from being around, and could have been taught, things. If she would have been able to, how much differently we would have been taught. Uvalde would have been, one person shot and the shooter would have been neutralized, type of thing, instead of what we're hearing in the news now.
Yeah, and here's the thing: like, I'm not anti-cop at all. I was a police officer. I understand the job, right? Like, I understand the difficulty of it, but I also understand the reality of it is that cops, and especially now, and this is not to let any officer, I wasn't there, I don't know all the facts, right? Things are coming out that aren't very favorable. It underscores the purpose of what we're talking about when we started with the Supreme Court ruling, is that the police, that you are responsible for your own safety, you have to be your own first responder. You have to be. And you can't allow the government to take away that right, because now you rely on the police and you don't know what response you're going to get from them. You don't know who's going to come. And I love police officers. I do. By and large, they do an awesome job and they sacrifice a lot. But especially in this time right now, the reality is an officer is going to err on the side of, it came out that, one of the officers might have had a chance to, or maybe two of them, to engage this shooter with the rifle, right? They had the opportunity. They didn't because of fear of hitting a child. And I get it like that. But here's the thing, like, officers are scared to make bad decisions, and they rather err and not act and not respond, not intervene, than intervene and make the bad decision. And you only know what the outcome is going to be at the end, right? And so these officers might have, said, "Hey, I don't want to take the shot," but this is why we have to be, even as concealed carriers, we have to know our ability. We have to be confident in our ability and know what we can do. And it's not just good enough to say, well, in a self-defense shooting, it's only going to be 3 yards, 3 seconds, 3 shots, because yeah, maybe that's the scenario that plays out in your mind. But especially, as officers, you have to have skills. You have to have marksmanship skills. And as concealed carriers, I'm not saying you're going to get involved in every incident, and you probably shouldn't. But if you were outside this building at that time and you see a kid shooting a rifle into a school and running around, and you're 15 yards away from this kid and you have a firearm, can you make that shot? And are you confident? Do you know your abilities? And that's why I think training is so important. It's so important. And while we push huge push for constitutional carry, permitless carry, no requirements on training by the state to carry a firearm, we know that the responsibility is huge, and we need training. We absolutely need training.
Yeah, and to that point, Matthew, I'm going to do a shameless plug. I'm doing a Guardian Essentials and Guardian Standard class next month, July 23rd and 24th in Bright, Indiana. If anybody wants to check that out, go to ohio.concealedcarry.com, because some of those skills that you just talked about will be skills that we will be learning about, knowing your distance, knowing what you can do and can't do, because we'll do them up close, three shots, 3 seconds type of drills. And we're also going to get back to that 15-yard mark to say, okay, what can you do and how fast can you shoot in those kind of situations? And people normally see some remarkable improvements when they come to the class, because they're being instructed properly for it, and they minimize their movement and become quicker. And at the same time, that it's a real eye opener, because one of the hallmarks of the class, I think, is that at the end of each day we go along and do a little force on force. And if you've never done force on force, it really goes along, forces your brain to go along and look and see what's happening, understand what you can do, understand what and then making a very quick decision for it. And those are all things, as much as I like going along and exercising my trigger finger, I also exercise my brain to make sure that I've got the ability to go along and make those quick decisions, because I don't want to go along and make a bad decision and then live with it for the rest of my life. And I'm sure nobody else does. So if you're in the Indiana, southeastern Indiana, southwestern Ohio area, and want to check out a class, come over, and we'd love to have you.
Yeah, you can check it out at www.ohio.concealedcarry.com and navigate over to the class schedule, and you'll see the Guardian Essentials pistol. And it's a 2-day class. You can sign up individually for individual days or the 2 days. But yeah, it'll be a fantastic class. I know Rob and I have taught it in the past, and it's been a lot of fun. If you're a Guardian Nation member, I believe you get a discount on the class.
They get a discount. And I also posted a video, a review video from our 2019 class. So if you want to see what it's about and hear it firsthand, you can see the participants from the 2019 class talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so get some training, guys, and you know, and if you're a teacher and you're in a state that you know allows you to carry, come on out, man, or ladies too, right? But yeah, come on out. It'd be an awesome time and skills that are super valuable for every concealed carrier.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
yeah.
something else I wanted to bring up too is in Ohio, where we are. Last week, we had the governor sign the bill allowing school personnel to carry inside of a school. So,
Mhm.
Ohio will be joining those 28 states to allow school personnel that have received training and have been authorized by the school board to go ahead and carry in school. Which hopefully will never be necessary, but at the same time, it will be good to go along and have school personnel that are willing to go along and stop a criminal doing a criminal act.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we got two more stories we're going to cover quickly, and then we're going to wrap this up because we're getting close to an hour here, guys. And so the first story is I'm going to switch it up a little, Rob, and talk about this bipartisan Senate gun control bill. Um, you need to be aware of what's going on and what's going on with guys like Mitch McConnell. Um, and Republicans, and we will have a list. I'm sure in as soon as they vote, they voted it, I believe. I think the Senate is going to vote tomorrow on this bill, but basically, it's going to expand. It's going to federalize. Give. Let me phrase it this way. It's going to give states incentives, money incentives, to institute red flag laws that um, are going to strip people of their Second Amendment right without justification and without representation in court. These ex parte hearings where they don't have representation and somebody makes a claim, it's going to it's bad legislation. We have to fight this. This bipartisan bill expands the NICS system or NICS checks. The when you go to buy a firearm and the FFL runs your information, it's going to expand that. And for people that are 18 to 20, it is going to look into the juvenile records and pull stuff that should be sealed and should not carry over into your adult life and prohibit you from possessing firearms potentially. Now, you know, the idea is that, well, if we can stop these young shooters that seem to target schools, maybe we can stop school shootings. None of these school shooters, none of them would have been stopped by looking back into their criminal history, even juvenile history. Even the kid who had that was doing some very disturbing things, right? Cutting up kids, cutting up animals and things like that, and slicing himself and things like that. Very disturbing things, but he was checked out and did not fit the criteria as somebody who should have their Second Amendment rights stripped away from them because of some mental problems. So the issue is they are using these tragedies to push massive gun control and they're making it seem like it's not a big deal, that it's just, you know, it's a bipartisan thing and we're meeting in the middle, and this is not the middle, guys. And we need to be very, very aware of what's happening here. I don't know. What are you seeing in this, Rob?
The red flag laws are a big concern for me. And I'll put this out there. I'm not against taking or separating people from their firearms when they're having mental problems. And you can listen to my podcast, and I've had mental health professionals on several times that think it's very important for the 2A community to go along and realize that there are mental health resources out there to help us so that we don't lose our 2A rights and such. And one of the biggest things that I don't like about the 2A or around the red flag laws think about the situation to where a court order goes along and says that I should be going along and I should take Matthew's guns. I'm a police officer and I knock on Matthew's door. If Matthew's having a mental issue for whatever reason, he's having family issues, financial issues, health issues, any of those type of things that the court might go along and say, yes, it's probably not a good time. What's going to happen when he sees me as a police officer come to the door and knock and say, hi, I'm here with a court order to take your guns? That's not what somebody would really want. What you need somebody at that point is you need mental health professionals to intervene, family members to help out, do it. And that's where go along. Just the other week I had Sarah Albrecht on with Hold My Guns, and she's trying to go along and make a network of FFLs across the country, that if I'm moving, if I am going through a divorce, if I'm going through some financial problems, if I know that I'm not in the right state of mind, that I can proactively go along and say, hey, here's a gun shop. I'm going to give them my guns. They're going to take them and hold them and keep them secured and just like they would their own property. And then when I feel better about it, I can get them back, which is a lot more responsible, because all these red flag laws are real heavy on taking them as quickly as possible and extremely slow on giving them back. And those are the things, when you go along and really think about it, it's like, wait a minute, they're taking personal property without any warning. You also go along, and if somebody charges you or says, hey, I don't think Matthew should go along and have guns for this reason, it's then the burden's on Matthew to go along and prove that he's not crazy. Think how hard that is to go along and do that unless you retain a lawyer, unless you go through your own expense of getting a psychologist, a psych evaluation. And that goes right back into what we were saying with the Supreme Court ruling and things like that. If you're in a lower income, if you're in a situation where you don't have all the money in the world to spend on lawyers and psychologists, it's going to unequivocally going to go along and impact lower income people, because they'll get accused and they won't have any way of defending themselves when it comes to these, because they can't take off work, they can't afford the lawyer, can't afford the psychologist, and it's just a bad way all around. We should be pushing more programs like Walk Talk America, like Hold My Guns, to where people can proactively, and the family members can go along proactively, help them get the help they need without going along, wrestling them to the ground and then stripping the guns out of them and then saying, oh, have a good day. Because there's most red flag laws, they take the guns and then leave the person there with their knives, with their cars, with any number of different ways they could go along and commit suicide too. But we're not worried about that. We're just worried about taking their guns. And those are all the shortcomings to where figure out a way of helping people instead of just going along and furthering along your anti-gun agenda.
Yeah, 100%, man. Couldn't agree more. Those organizations are huge. And that's what we need to be doing and standing behind, not these red flag laws. And one last thing on the red flag laws, you can only seize the guns that you know about. And if you come to my house and you don't know what I have registered, because there's not a, universal registration of my guns, when you come to my house and you say, we want your guns, I'm going to say, okay, go get them. And if you find them all, great. If you don't, you're not going to know if you have them all anyways, unless there's a universal registration. And this is all why these laws will not work until they implement universal registration. So they get these on the books and then say, well, they're ineffective. We need to do something to make them more effective. And what is that? Universal registration. And that's when it falls apart. So Not to belabor the point, but this stuff is bad, and we'll find out more as the days go by, but keep an eye on that, guys.
Hey, Matthew, just one quick plug for Walk and Talk America. If you know somebody who's having a mental issue, anxiety, depression, it doesn't matter. Walk Talk America has a free and anonymous evaluation online, and I love giving it a plug because it's free and you can take it if you feel good, just see how you're doing. It's WTTA.org/love. It's anonymous, it's free, and it gives you resources if you're having problems to where you can go along and get some help. and the plug.
Love it. Love it, man. All right. So final story, I switched it up so we wouldn't end on that. There's a go to the show notes one more time for the plug for the show notes. Go to the show notes, check out this this video. The article is sheriff demonstrates that magazine size makes very little difference, and it's about a 15-minute video. The sheriff goes through. He's got a male and a female, and they go through and they shoot pistols. They shoot an AR, or they shoot a semi-automatic. They shoot with two 15-round magazines, then they do it with three 10-round magazines, then they do it with 5 6-round magazines. And they take the times of these two, the guy Jim and the lady Christy, all right? And then they do it with an AR, they do it with a revolver, and they do it with a 1911 with 7-round magazines. All right. And so what they find across the board is that the difference between shooting two 15-round magazines and 5 6-round magazines is about like 2 or 3 seconds. So it's not significant. And these are not like, if you watch them, the dude shoots pretty well. The lady, not so much. I mean, she's proficient, but she's certainly not John Wick. And neither one of these guys are probably, like competitive shooters. They're your average, probably police officer on the street. But they're not significant times between 5 6-round magazines and two 15-round magazines. And the point is that we're constantly here that like, oh, well, these magazine limits, if there were 10-round magazines, then it wouldn't be able to do so much damage. This debunks it on that level. Plus they go through and they have a runner running behind the line. And once the person goes to reload, they have that runner start running towards the shooter. Now they're behind the line, right? They're not running in front of the line. They start out at 25 feet and see, well, if somebody makes a magazine change, is that an opportunity to rush the person and close a distance and disarm them? And what they find is, on average, the person's able to run 9 feet during that magazine reload. And so what is showing is, yes, there is opportunity, right? If somebody is reloading, of course, but it's not the substantial lengths of time that you would think, or that the media wants you to think, that there's 10, 15 seconds that people can rush the shooter and disarm them. They shoot it 21 rounds from a 1911 using 7-round magazines. They do it in 9.78 seconds, showing that even if you have 7-round magazines, you can crank off a lot of rounds, right? So the magazine size really has no bearing on the number of rounds you can fire. Not substantially. Of course, there's a difference, but it's not substantial. And they even go, I found it pretty funny. They do the New York reload, which is with the revolver. So they have a 6-shot revolver. They have multiple revolvers in a bag, 6-shot revolvers. And let's say, we're going to ban 9mm because it blows lungs out, and semi-automatics because they're weapons of war, and nobody needs anything but revolvers. It was good in the Wild West. So everybody's okay, great. So somebody goes and buys 6-round revolvers, 38 special, throw it in a backpack. This dude pulls out and he cranks off 6 rounds, throws the gun down, grabs another one out of the bag. He shoots 30 rounds from these revolvers in 18.8 seconds. So actually quicker than, or right about the same speed as somebody that's shooting 3 10-round magazines. So I went through it quickly because, we're getting low on time, but and threw a bunch of numbers, but watch the video because it's very eye-opening. And for, it really debunks this idea that if we just ban, high capacity magazines over, whatever X number of rounds you want to fill in the number there, then it'll be substantially different. That is not the factor. The factor is getting somebody on, getting hits on this guy to stop him quickly, rather than worrying about disarming them in between magazine changes, or they have 6 rounds instead of 5 rounds. We're focusing on the wrong stuff, guys. And that's why these laws are doomed. They're bound to fail. and it's not about public safety. It just isn't.
Well, one thing you skipped over there, Matthew, when you watch the videos, is 1911 that he was using was 110 years old. This was not, some super duper, whiz bang. I mean, it wasn't a gun that was just invented a couple weeks ago.
Right.
This was, a gun that's been around for a long time. Revolvers have been around, 120, 130 years type, the double action revolvers. And it just goes along and shows you that the issue is the person with the gun, not the gun itself. So you can do whatever you want, when it comes to gun laws. It's not going to make a bit of difference when it comes to the person who's holding that gun and what they will do with it. And when you go along and you look at magazine capacities, the thing always pops in my mind is, are the first 10 rounds, practice rounds, so they don't hurt as much as if you had 30 rounds, because it makes it almost sound as if, well, you could shoot 10 people, but then they got to change the magazine, so the first 10 we don't care about, and then we reload it again. Well, it doesn't matter where you've got 10, 20, 30. In fact, I would rather see somebody come up with one of those 50, 100 round magazines, because for one, the weight of all that ammunition loaded into it makes it extremely unwieldy. The other thing is, most of those have a real hard time of not jamming. So guess what? You have a 50 round magazine compared to my 17 round magazine. Guess what? I probably will make better use of mine than you will, because every other shot it'll be jamming on you. Just one of those things for people to think about.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So, all right, guys. Well, we didn't end on a total downer. Check out that video. I think it'll be entertaining for you, if nothing else. But I want to give one more shout out to our sponsors of the podcast, Barrel Block. If you do dry fire, consider getting a barrel block for, I think they're like $10 or something, maybe $15 or something like that. It's better to make your gun completely inert and remove any possibility of getting any live ammunition in there. So head over to Block Safety, BLOK safety.com, and the Rangetech Bluetooth shot timer, an affordable Bluetooth timer, easy to control, set the settings on your phone and all that stuff, save your strings of fire, your times, all that, and do it all Bluetooth. It's an awesome option made in the United States. So check that out. That's rangetechtimer.com. And anything you want to close up with, Rob?
If anybody's in the southeastern Indiana on next Tuesday, June 28th, I'm doing a constitutional carry overview for people that might be thinking about it, because constitutional carry, permitless carry is your right. It's still your responsibility to understand the laws.
Amen. It's right on, man. So check that out. And where can they sign up?
They can find more information out at, unfortunately, facebook.com for it. I'm doing it in conjunction with the Women Armed and Ready down in Aurora, Indiana. So if you look at that on Facebook, you'll find all the information and where we're having it at.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. Thanks so much for doing this with me today. And thanks you guys for listening. I know you miss Riley. Hopefully we did it justice and you guys enjoyed the show. Remember, keep your eyes on those issues, those legal issues that are coming down the pipe. All right. So definitely. With that, we bid you farewell till next time, and a reminder to train right, train often, and train safe so you can fight hard, fight fast, and fight true. Take care.